the history does not denote this as a mere jumla. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next speaker, Dr. Kanimozhi NV Somu.
Honorable Chairperson, sir. The Union Government has earmarked a budget outlay of rupees 8,451.92 crores from the Ministry of Tribal Affairs. It's just an increase of 12.32% from the last year. Rupees 7,524.87 crores were sanctioned in the year 21-22. This, compared to the growth of the tribal population in various states, is not adequate for the overall development projects. I would like to highlight 2 points from the demand for grants 22-23. I completely agree with the vision and intention of the ministry to promote the livelihood of scheduled tribe community, particularly women and other vulnerable groups. First, I would like to invite attention to the educational programs and incentives. In 2022 Union Budget, the National Scheme for Incentive to Girl Child for Secondary Education, NSIGSE, which was started in 2008-9, to promote the enrollment of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe girls in secondary schools and reduce the dropout among them, has been discontinued. Under the NSIGE, a fixed deposit of rupees 3,000 was made in the name of each beneficiary on her enrollment in class 9. The girl was entitled to withdraw the sum along with the interest after turning 18, provided she has cleared class 10 and was unmarried. If there was any reason behind the discontinuing of the scheme, can the department elucidate on this? Dropout rate among school children has increased during COVID. Many students from marginalized communities have been compelled to stay out of schools and support their parents in their forest-based and land local livelihood. Was this situation assessed, and is there a correlation between continuing the NSIGSE scheme and improving the intakes in the school? Secondly, for this year 22-23, the Union Government has introduced capital expenditure on setting up a venture capital fund for scheduled tribe at 50 crores. The scheme was to be a social sector initiative to promote ST entrepreneurship and to support and incubate the startup ideas by the ST youth. In addition to this, a new scheme for development of tribal entrepreneurships in Northeast called Logistics and Marketing of Tribal Products in Northeast has been approved, and an amount of rupees 75 crores has been earmarked for the scheme. These could have been valuable initiatives had there been some feasibility study and report to support this budget. The lockdowns were characterized by several factors that puts India's 6.33 crore micro and small medium enterprises in jeopardy: closure of the mandis and the wholesale markets, transport restriction, disruptions in supply chain, and lock of procurement. Due to the sudden announcement of the lockdown measures, left them without their usual sources of income. The resulting financial insecurity had knock-on effects on the safety, health, and education of these communities. During the lockdown, instances of the forest land diversion defied this act, where the Environment Ministry has given clearance to 11 projects across the country and issued new guidelines for relaxing forest and environment clearance norms for mining by new leases, MOTA 2020. Some of these projects that required forest diversion were allowed without consulting those Grama Sabhas. Against this background, how do we explain the two new schemes to be benefit to the tribal community? Next, the Eklavya Model Residential Schools with a total financial outlay of 28,920 crore and the Pradhan Mantri Van Bandhu Kalyan Yojana with a total financial outlay of rupees 26,135 crore for the continuation till 31/3/26. It's unfortunate that Tamil Nadu has just got 7 Eklavya schools. I would request the Honorable Minister to allocate more schools to Tamil Nadu. A total of rupees 2,000 crores have been sanctioned for setting up the EMRS in the budget of 2023. Sir, the scope of existing scheme of SCA to TSA has been broadened, wherein comprehensive development of 36,428 villages will be undertaken in convergence with line ministries to develop these villages as Adarsh Gram under Pradhan Mantri Adi Adarsh Gram Yojana. These villages have tribal population of more than 500 and 50% tribals. My question is, Do we actually adopted all these Adarsh villages under this Yojana? We need a clear answer from the Honorable Minister. The point about discontinuing the education program for girls from the tribal community. Learning deficit has already increased drastically and many have dropped out of the schools and taken up some job to sustain their livelihood. How discontinuance of the targeted intervention program resolve this issue? The other point, to promote the entrepreneurship among tribal communities. Essentially, the poverty rate among the tribal groups and COVID pandemic has pushed them into the deep-neck financial stress. Some of the rural and urban women, small vendors have given up businesses and taken up street vending. No package was carved out as a part of the union government sector-wise COVID relief. How will these two schemes that hasn't provided any gradual relief aim to magically identify target communities and formulate a policy for institutions to make the scheme effective? A similar program, venture capital, found for SC is found to be underutilized as there is not many takers. In 2017-18, there is nil utilization in the scheme. How can the new scheme avoid the redundancy? Was there any baseline study done? Any consultation with the community undertaking? Any experts, including civil society, have offered recommendations? Can we get more information on how the department would implement the scheme targeting STs with effectiveness? Sir, some of the government which has taken monitor schemes which have been implemented need to be monitored properly and purposefully. One is the Elkavia model residential schools which need to be implemented throughout the tribal areas of the country. The pending dues to Tamil Nadu due to the post-matric scholarship and pre-matric scholarships for STs have to be paid immediately. Grants under provision to Article 275(1) of the Constitution requires to be done in 7 districts of Tamil Nadu where tribal people live in sizable numbers. Marketing and logistic facilities have to be implemented all over the country to help the tribal people. Development for promoting tribal products from northeastern region requires more focuses as of the population northeastern states belonging to the tribal communities. Usually, the Adivasi women depend on minor forest products like timber, forest medicine, honey, gooseberry, tree gum, fruits, kendu leaves, and sal seeds. Once upon a time, all these resources of the hills, mountains, land, water, and forest belonged to the Adivasis, and they used to survive in coexistence with nature. Their self-sufficiency was dependent on these resources. Now all these are under the control of the government and the private owners. The Adivasis have lost their self-sufficiency and become dependent on capital and to the global market for their earnings. How do they survive remains a valid question. They are advised to be Atmanirbhar, self-reliant. Moreover, when the Adivasi women were self-sufficient and self-reliant, they were forced to move out of the traditional life and move towards globalization, where they were made to be dependent on the industrialized and unorganized sector. Now at this stage, they are again asked to be Atmanirbhar. Sir, the tribal people need to be protected in their own environment without being disturbed very much from their original nature. Sir, the Indira Gandhi National Tribal University in Amarkantak, Anupur district, Madhya Pradesh, India was established through an act of parliament. Indira Gandhi National Tribal University Act 2007 by Government of India. We need a tribal university in Tamil Nadu for enhancing the educational aspiration of the tribal population in the country. There are about 36 groups of tribal population in the state, sir. Sir, in Tamil Nadu, Adi Dravida Housing and Development Corporation Limited, TADCO, was incorporated in 1974, a brainchild of our visionary leader, the then Chief Minister Dr. Kalaignar, under the Companies Act 1956. This is the first of its kind initiative in India. No other leader has shown such a love and care for the marginalized people in the country. The very important tribal development measure taken by the government of Tamil Nadu is imparting skill development training to tribal people, sir. Tamil Nadu, under the dynamic leadership of our Honorable Chief Minister Thalapathy M.K. Stalin, has several path-breaking schemes and training programs exclusively for the development and improvement of the overall status of the tribal population. There are several important schemes implemented for Adi Dravidas through the TADCO. Some of them are the land purchase scheme, the land development scheme, entrepreneur development scheme, special scheme for assistance of petrol, gas and retails, self-employment program for youth, financial assistance for medical and paramedical establishments, economic assistance to the self-help groups, revolving fund for the self-help groups are some of the which I have named, which has been existing in the Tamil Nadu. So, Adi Dravidas, women, members of the women industrial training cooperative societies need to create opportunities to strengthen the skill needs specific to trades among the youth belong to the Adi Dravidas. Several skill development training programs are organized through empaneled institutes of Tamil Nadu skill development, the youth for the wage employment. Sir, I wish the union government to provide adequate financial and constitutional support to the betterment of the tribal population in the country. Sir, a special mention about the Nari Koravas and Gypsies. They are nowhere either into the tribal or into the notified thing. I asked the government to take a special notification on them. Our CM, our leaders, MKS, has visited the Gypsies' house and taken care of them. Sir, there is one thing, there is a saying in the government, one India, one language, one India, one election, one India, one culture, and one India, one food. I think all this is not needed. One India and one standard living. That living standard we should create for the tribal people also. I also thank our floor leader, Tiruchi Swarnan, for giving me an opportunity. Thank you,
Next speaker, Sri Venkat.